Hey folks, welcome back. Tonight we're going to be discussing a little bit on the Roth, versus traditional, right? A pre-tax part of your 401k or the Roth part. Which one do you do? And how do you decide which one's best for your situation going forward? We're going to cover a couple of things tonight on that. And taxes is the big question here. All right, so for those who don't know, Roth, versus traditional, IRA or 401k, what's the difference? Well, a traditional, okay, T right here. Basically, what happens here is that when you put money in here, it's considered pre-tax, meaning we do not pay taxes on this money when it goes in there originally. We get a tax savings, actually. Then it's going to grow tax deferred, meaning we can grow it, sell stuff, buy stuff. We don't pay taxes on it then. But then when we take the money out, all right, we're going to pay ordinary income. I mean, we're going to pay like an income tax on this money when it gets taken out of there. So the pros here, we don't pay taxes today. The cons, we're going to pay taxes later on. All right. Now, a Roth, what happens here? Well, a Roth account, it's considered after tax, meaning we're going to pay taxes today. We don't get a tax deduction for doing a Roth account. Now, when it goes in there, it also is now going to grow tax-free, meaning you can buy and sell stuff in there, you don't get taxed on it. And when you take the money out down the road, again, you get tax-free. It is not considered income when you take money out of a Roth. It does not matter how much it grows by. All right. So with that in mind, kind of seeing this here, all right, what are the pros and cons to both of these potentially? And how do you decipher which one's best for you? Now, that question I think can be solved here. Depends what income bracket you're in today. We had someone come in the office the other day, and they were in the 12% tax bracket. Pretty low, right? They were a business owner. They wrote off a lot of stuff already, and they were in a low tax bracket. And they were asking this question. Well, for them, all right, because their income potential could be a lot higher in the future. Right? They can probably make more money as a business owner. You can grow the business, right, and be in a higher tax bracket later on. So it probably made sense for them to actually, do a Roth account because you can put that money away, pay taxes on it now, but then it grows down the road, and maybe you're in a higher tax bracket. Maybe you're retired now, and taxes went higher in the future. You can pull this money out tax-free. For a lot of people out there, the Roth will make a lot of sense because in most cases, the 22% tax bracket, right, 24. Technically, in the future, where are taxes going to be? That becomes the question. Are taxes going to go up or down? In my opinion, I think taxes will probably go up. Right? We have $36 trillion of debt in this country. Taxes will probably increase. And if you can look at this and go, well, what if taxes increase by 10%? Where will I be? And where will I be when I retire? Because you're taking this money out typically when you're retired. So an example here, if we have someone who, they make $200K a year, this is where it becomes a little tricky, right? They make $200,000 a year and they spend $120K a year. Does it make sense for them to do a Roth or a traditional? What makes more sense for them? Well, right now, the $200K, if they're married, okay, they're kind of right in the cost of this, like 24% tax bracket. And then when they retire, 120K, that's like their taxable income coming in. They're going to be in the verge of the 22% tax bracket today. So initially, people see this and go, well, it makes sense then to not pay 24 and I'll pay 22 later. That could be the case. But that's assuming taxes stay the same the rest of your life. And taxes don't, unfortunately. They could go up or down. And what I would say, I think it's safe to assume taxes will probably go up. So this 22% tax bracket we're in now, in 10 or 15 years, what if that went to 32? Now we're assuming here. We don't know what it's actually going to be. I do know in 2026, unless a tax cut gets proposed here and passed through Congress, 22 will become the 25, right? That's kind of the near term. I think 10, 15 years from now, what if that's the 32? Well, then I was probably better paying off the 24 today, right? And also you think, well, if you pay taxes on a smaller of money now and then it grows and then it's tax free, it could be better for you too. So in this circumstance, I would actually argue a Roth account can make a lot of sense here. Now we're getting close, right? It could go either way, but I think someone in this situation, I'm probably going to say a Roth account makes more sense. Okay. Now, where does a traditional make sense? Well, let's say we got somebody who's in the top tax bracket. All right, we're making, well, maybe even higher, 700K a year. We're making good money. All right, we're in a 37% tax bracket. That becomes 39 and 26. Okay, and maybe you don't spend a lot of this money. Maybe we actually, when we retire, we're going to probably spend more, like $120,000 a year. We're not big spenders. We make good money today. Well, pre-tax probably makes sense here, right? Why? Because we're paying 37%. Down the line, we're probably going to be in the 22. Even if you add 10% to this number and we get to 32, 37 versus 32, right? We're still in a better spot. All right. Now, odds are this person spends 120K when they make 700, probably unlikely. Right? If they were in a higher tax bracket in retirement, we probably want to do Roth still. Right? And I say this as a point of view of where we have people come into our office every day who are close to retirement and they have too much money in their pre-tax accounts and not enough money in their Roth accounts. Very rarely is it the other way around. You really can never have too much in a Roth because your RMDs and all this other stuff down the road can catch up to you. And that's a different video for a different time. But if you're trying to choose what you do in your 401k, it's really hard to think, if you're 35 choosing this 30 years in the future, if you're 50 and 15 years in the future, it's tough. But what would it say? Try and measure this out. Add 10% to your current tax bracket of what you spend, right, per year. And if you're above that mark, traditional probably makes sense. If we're below that mark, Roth is probably the option you should be doing. And you can do a mixture, not saying one's better than the other. The thing that kind of makes sense of that, though, if you have a match your employee is doing, that can never be a Roth. So they match you 6%, right? They match you 6% here. Well, if you're also doing 6% to a Roth, well, their 6% is going to be pre-tax. All right, it's going to go into the traditional side. So you're going to get both probably anyway through a matching. Your side might make more sense to be the Roth portion of that because then you have two different portfolios now you can pull from and utilize in your retirement. And if you have a mixture, and I didn't really mention, if you have a mixture of Roth and pre-tax, that 120K we mentioned earlier, like here, not all of that has to be taxed. All right, because if you have a Roth and a pre-tax, maybe 60K can come from the Roth, and the other 60K comes from the pre-tax. Well, now we're not in the 22% tax bracket anymore. We're in the 12 if you're married. All right, so a lot of stuff comes into play here. But you're trying to choose which one. Try and think in that way. And I would say for most people that we run into, the Roth account typically beats out the traditional. Now, if you're in a really high tax bracket, traditional might make sense. But even then, Roth still has a play there that you can utilize. So hopefully you enjoyed the video. I'm a little long here at 10 minutes, but hopefully you'll learn a couple things throughout here. Any questions, leave a comment below. Push the like button, subscribe to our channel. If you need anything else, give us a call. Thanks.